Welcome to the Global Challenge 213-216. I'm Clarity Ross, bringing you the big boost of right use of time, right use of mind, which are affirmations, which are the fastest way to wake up. And we need the speediest way right now, the very speediest way, because we have to do it quickly, because we're trying to teach the ego something which is impossible. And we're going to try to give it a very big lesson, very big problems for sure. So this video is going to focus on topic matter which has to do with, for instance, pressure. I'll use these examples here for you. Pressure can't teach the ego anything. Pressure doesn't need to be pressure. Instead of pressure, oneness is seen. Demands can't teach the ego anything. Demands don't need to be demands. Instead of demands, oneness is seen. Control can't teach the ego anything. Control doesn't need to be control. Instead of control, oneness is seen. Obedience can't teach the ego anything. Obedience doesn't need to be obedience. Instead of obedience, oneness is seen. Indoctrination can't teach the ego anything. Instead of indoctrination doesn't need to be indoctrination. Instead of indoctrination, oneness is seen. Censorship can't teach the ego anything. Censorship doesn't need to be censorship. Instead of censorship, oneness is seen. Consensus can't teach the ego anything. Consensus doesn't need to be consensus. Instead of consensus, oneness is seen. So, we have this type of format here dealing with, what are we talking about? We're talking about ways to coerce ourselves. Coercion cannot teach the ego anything. Coercion doesn't need to be coercion. Instead of coercion, oneness is seen. So these are very important to practice these, because these are the things, these are what's coming now in the world. There's all these types of pressures, okay, to try and teach the ego something. So we need to practice this. We will practice this right now. Let's see if that light can be seen. Not so good. Oh well, yeah, good enough. So we will talk about here, okay, pressure. Pressure can't teach the ego anything. Pressure doesn't need to be pressure. Instead of pressure, oneness is seen. Demands can't teach the ego anything. Demands don't need to be demands. Instead of demands, oneness is seen. Consensus can't teach the ego anything. Consensus doesn't need to be consensus. Instead of consensus, oneness is seen. Indoctrination can't teach the ego anything. Indoctrination doesn't need to be indoctrination. Instead of indoctrination, oneness is seen. Intimidation can't teach the ego anything. Intimidation doesn't need to be intimidation. Instead of intimidation, oneness is seen. Coercion can't teach the ego anything. Coercion doesn't need to be coercion. Instead of coercion, oneness can be seen. Oneness is seen. Okay, let's do coercion, the three-part, which is each part of the affirmation done 3 times. Coercion can't teach the ego anything. Coercion can't teach the ego anything. Coercion can't teach the ego anything. Coercion doesn't need to be in coercion. Coercion doesn't need to be coercion. Coercion doesn't need to be coercion. Instead of coercion, oneness is seen. Instead of coercion, oneness is seen. Instead of coercion, oneness is seen. I will do the embellishment form of it. Coercion can't teach the ego anything. Coercion doesn't need to be coercion. Instead of coercion, the gentle and serene dawning, a vision of oneness is seen right now. Coercion can't teach the ego anything. Coercion doesn't need to be coercion. Instead of coercion, the gentle and serene dawning of the vision of oneness is seen right now. Coercion can't teach the ego anything. Coercion doesn't need to be coercion. Instead of coercion, the gentle and sublime dawning of the vision of oneness is seen right now, this very instant. One more time. Coercion can't teach the ego anything. Coercion does not need to be coercion. Instead of coercion, the gentle, serene, and sublime dawning of the vision of oneness is seen right now, this very instant. All right. Very great. These are very helpful affirmations to go over this stuff. What we did here in this video is we brought to light the pressures that we will try to bring to bear upon the ego to try and force it to learn something. We're going to try and force it. Force, coercion, pressure, indoctrination, intimidation, demands, control, consensus, all this stuff. Bullying. We're going to bully the ego into learning. We can say that. Bullying can't teach the ego anything. Bullying doesn't need to be bullying. Instead of bullying, oneness is seen. So you can come up with your own subject matter to use. Some form of, it'll occur to you, say, hey, bullying. You see, something brings to mind bullying. You'd say, bullying can't teach the ego anything. And then you start doing the affirmations and then start including more around the constellation of bullying, coercion, all this coerciveness, pressure, demands. That too, none of that can teach the ego anything. Therefore, none of it has to be what it is, what we see it as. Instead of seeing all these various forms of coercion, oneness is seen. The gentle, sublime, serene, beatific, glorious dawning of the vision of oneness is seen right now, this moment, this very instant. That's when it's seen. Okay, we are going very fast because we need to go very fast. That's what it's all about right now. When we talk about what is the next big thing, hear that? What is the next big thing? This is it. This is the next big thing. This is, well, it's coming out of Silicon Valley, where all the next big things come from. But we're usually used to hearing technology is the next big thing. Yeah, what is the next big app? Whatever. No, the next big app, next big thing is these affirmations. That is the next big thing. So if you want to be ahead of the game, this is it, because this is going really, really fast. Whew, like that. So we don't get caught up in the nonsense and the utter eccentricity of trying to teach the impossible. All right. Very great. See you in the next video.